Hello, y'all, and welcome back. It is time for another race weekend preview. We've had the week off after the Spanish Grand Prix, and we are headed North America side to the Canadian Grand Prix. But as usual, talk a little bit about what we saw, some of my opinions, and where we think stuff is going after the Spanish Grand Prix. So, Spanish Grand Prix, of course, had the technical directive about front wing flexion go into effect, so it was expected that some teams might have to adapt their wings. There was a hope that McLaren was going to be one of the teams that was more heavily using the trick, but that definitely turned out, I think, just to be a hope, because McLaren looked very strong over the entire weekend. Obviously 1-2 in qualifying, 1-2 in the race. And most importantly, that really kind of tells you where that car is at, is even though they identified that Verstappen was on that 3-stop pushing strategy very early, they did not take the bait. They just drove their own strategy, were confident in the pace of the car to get the job done, and did not react to that. So strategically, they ran their own race, which is very good for, it's a good sign for a team that's confident. Oscar kind of had the measure of Lando all qualifying and all the race day. Lando did show some spurts of speed in the race where it looked like he might have the opportunity to catch up to his teammate. But in the end, Oscar takes another race win, extends his championship lead again, and that's 5 wins on the season for him. So he's looking to be quite the strong, informed driver. Give just a special shout out for the pretty solid and slick double stack that they did at the safety car. I think it was 3.4, 3.3 seconds, so slightly slower than regular stops, but they got both cars in, both cars out for new tires ahead of Verstappen. That was a big risk, taking that there in the middle of the race. But yeah, McLaren, I think, still very much the form team to be beating. Next up, we've got Ferrari, as Charles Leclerc grabbed another podium in this one. Hamilton did out-qualify Leclerc for the first time since China, as apparently I'm not paying attention to where I'm going because I'm messing with my notes. Let's just cut across that. Don't do that. Yeah, so that's fun. Don't text and drive, kids, especially not Formula One cars. But yeah, so Hamilton out-qualified Leclerc. How much of that was just on, if that was on pace, I know Leclerc did only do one run in Q3, specifically to save a set of soft tires for the race, since it was going to be a pretty much guaranteed 2-stop at minimum around there. And I think that it kind of showed. Leclerc had much better race pace than Hamilton all the way throughout the weekend and looked very strong. The Ferrari, though, still is a decent step away from what the McLarens are capable of and a full tilt Red Bull. Also, again, early in the race, I think Ferrari lost themselves a good chunk of time by once again not being decisive with swapping the drivers positionally at the early stage. I think it cost Leclerc about 4 seconds to the car ahead by the time they did swap him and Hamilton. It was a few laps, so definitely Ferrari continues to just not make the strategic choice, and they really don't have the car to be overcoming it. It's looking decent, but it's still very much well off of the pace of what the Red Bull and McLarens can do, especially with their hopes of whatever the last batch of updates might have done. Next up, we've got Mercedes. George Russell continues to perform solidly in a car that looks pretty decent to drive. A good bounce back for the team after a very disappointing Monaco weekend. Obviously, qualifying kind of did them in, so there wasn't a whole lot they were going to be able to do in that regard. And also on the other side of the garage, it's now 3 races without a point for Kimi Antonelli. Of course, 2 of those are by way of mechanical DNF, so not his fault in Imola or here this week in Spain, which is actually what brought out that late race safety car. And of course, Monaco was just caught in the Williams train. They never got to leave it after qualifying. But I think the Mercedes is still a decent car performance-wise to drive. It is a little concerning, though, that Antonelli's had 2 power unit failures in the past 3 races. Is it just bad luck, or is Mercedes, trying to push that engine and use it in the higher modes more frequently? Obviously, by regulation, they have to give the exact same spec engines to their customer teams. So McLaren, Aston, Williams, they're all running the same engines, but is Mercedes trying to run it in a more risky mode to get a little extra power out of it, to see what they can do to potentially apply that to George's car? I know, like, for example, they did it in 2021 with Valtteri Bottas, where they pushed and took grid penalties for him early in the season to see just what the engine was capable of, and really let the engine that Hamilton was using at the end of the season eat to try and maximize their hopes at that 2021 championship. But we will wait and see if Mercedes continues to have power unit problems. It could be a concern. I'd have to go back and look. I don't seem to recall too many other power unit problems at the customer teams, but I will say it's an entirely vibes-based assessment. I'd have to go look at the numbers. I'm sure there's some people that have dropped out. Next up, a team making probably their earliest mention definitely their earliest mention of the season on this list, Sauber. Very good weekend from Nico Hülkenberg. Put the car into Q3, and then was driving around in a good spot for points, fighting with other cars quite nicely. And then, of course, the late race safety car was able to make a move on Hamilton on slightly fresher soft tires. And actually, it does turn out, word is that they made some wing adjustments to Hamilton's car at the pit stop that he did not get on with, and really cost him some extra pace. But to see a Sauber go past a Ferrari quite like that was surprising and impressive. But a huge haul of points for the Kick Sauber team. P5 finish for Nico Hülkenberg is really good. On the other side of the garage, though, Gabriel Bortoleto still not really, making huge impressions. He just kind of finished where he started, and when you factor in the retirement of Kimi Antonelli, that's not particularly great. He's been relatively anonymous, and if he continues to be anonymous while Nico starts racking in points, it's going to start raising the pressure on the rookie with the Audi team looking to take over next year. They're going to want a driver pairing that is going to do some work for them. Next up, Alphabet Soup, Visa Cash App, RB, VCarb, RB, whatever you want to call them these days, Alpha Tauri, Toro Rosso, Minardi, anyone. Liam Lawson very much fighting and battling tooth and nail out there today. This time, though, rather surprisingly, the wars that he was involved in, the contact, the wheel banging, pretty much all on the other cars, except for the one incident on the Haas where he kind of tried to go for a lunge and had to back out. There was a little bit of touch there, but even with all of that, still was unable to get himself into the points-paying position. While on the other side of the garage, his teammate, Isaac Hadjar, still very strong in that RB car. A Q3 appearance and some more points for that Visa, that RB team. So Isaac Hadjar, obviously that very public retirement, aka crash at the very first race of the season. He was visibly beat up by it and upset with himself. Has been very strong the rest of the season. Was competitive with Yuki while he was there, but now that Yuki is gone and Lawson is there, Isaac Hadjar has been just owning that team and controlling it very strongly. Next up, we got Alpine, and much like Hadjar in RB, Pierre Gasly, a relatively straightforward race for him. Got himself into Q3, so a top 10 start and a top 10 finish. But even with that, Alpine still sits in that dead last position in the Constructors' Championship, which is not particularly great. It does look like they may have some opportunities, but also you've got to factor in the kind of second seat drama, as Franco Colapinto also has really yet to do anything to impress in that second seat after having taken over from Jack Doohan. And neither of them have been able to get really anywhere near Pierre Gasly. Did I miss a note in Sauber? Yeah, I did miss a note in Sauber specifically for Gabriel Bortoleto, so we'll go back to that real quick. But it is relevant. So essentially, Gabriel Bortoleto and the Doohan-Colapinto combination are now the only cars on the grid that have yet to score any points. So they've definitely got to figure something out in that second seat, as does Gabriel Bortoleto there in the Sauber if Nico's scoring points. The RB team, Liam Lawson is getting close to points, but they're going to need him to step up as well if they want to start challenging Williams in the Constructors' Championship. Okay, mixed jumbled brain aside, now we're back on track, so that's the end of Alpine. Not a whole lot extra to talk about there. Just the pressure that Franco Colapinto is going to be under as this season continues and he remains in that seat, car. Now, for the lowest appearance that they've had pretty much all season on the list, Red Bull is right here, and is here by way of, well, multiple factors. A late race implosion from the Red Bull team and Max Verstappen, with netting them a penalty that pushed them down to a P10 finishing position. And Yuki Tsunoda was just a non-factor all weekend, dead last in qualifying, and then was really not much of anything in the race. And unfortunately, it's starting to look that, you know, as these weekends go on, Yuki seems to be getting further from Verstappen in overall pace. He came into the car first couple practice sessions, was pretty close, putting up times, and then race pace and qualifying pace has definitely been falling away from him at this stage, which is not particularly good. But there's not a lot to say about Yuki and that second Red Bull seat. The big story is really kind of Max and Red Bull's, like I said, implosion at the end of the race. Obviously, Red Bull is doing well to understand their car, committed to the 3-stop early to try and put pressure on the McLarens, and definitely had the McLarens thinking about him. They didn't react, but he was definitely going to be potentially in the mix to undercut and cause trouble for Lando at the end, because he was pushing on. Very obvious that the tire wear discrepancy between Red Bull and McLaren is quite big, and they're having to push that car very hard. That also might be why Yuki is falling further back. The harder they need to push that car, the less comfortable Yuki is with it. But as a knock-on result of that 3-stop strategy, when that late safety car came out, instead of leaving Verstappen out there and just kind of trying to fight and hold off and see what he could do, they put him on a set of hard tires, not a set of used softs that I think he still would have had from qualifying, but a set of new hard tires, which nobody used in the race itself, and definitely proved to be very difficult to get up to temperature for a safety car restart. As a result of that, he had a huge moment on the cold tires exiting the final corner to come down the main straight. That caused him to lose position to Leclerc. There was a little bit of wheel rubbing that I'm sure was a factor and an addition to his ire. And then you had George Russell making the attempted move up the inside of turn 1, and Verstappen having to take to the escape road. On top of all of that, after rejoining on the escape road, the Red Bull team tells Verstappen to hand that position back. Now, I think they were a bit hasty. Verstappen himself said, nope, he wasn't ahead. I had, the right to the position. And looking back at that turn 1 incident, I believe that to be the case. And I believe the steward's report actually might say the same. But essentially, Red Bull was incorrect in telling him to give up that position, and that only made Max more angry. And a frustrated Verstappen is a very hot-headed Verstappen, and he has kind of done the red mist thing in the past. This time was pretty egregious. Turn 5, he goes to let George through. George goes around the outside, turns into the corner expecting that he's being given the position. Verstappen accelerates and doesn't really turn into the corner, and just kind of drives into him. Now, from my reading after the fact to try and just look at all angles, it would appear that the general guideline for handing a position over to another driver is that you do not attack for 2 corners following the swap of positions. So the whole argument that, he was just trying to get the position back as fast as he could, not the case. He would need to, George never got fully clear of him. He kept a piece of his car alongside at all times. And B, he would not have been allowed to attack into that corner. And furthermore, as more onboards, and especially the forward-facing onboard, because the onboard during the race time was the rear-facing camera, and they can only broadcast one of those onboards. They have to get the other one post-race. So the forward-facing onboard also paints a pretty dire picture. You see, as you would expect, Verstappen looking in his right mirror, slowing down to let George by. But as soon as George is alongside, he accelerates pretty hard, and the turn-in, really the important thing is when you see his hands turn into the corner, it's already way too late. I think Max Verstappen is more than lucky to have only gotten a 10-second penalty in that situation. I think it probably should have been a more significant time penalty and potentially some kind of fines, because that was an intentional crash. You get banned from sim racing events completely for doing that. The fact that F1 is just like a 10-second penalty, same penalty that Alex Albon got for running Lawson off the track and or taking to escape road and retaining his position. I think that's a little ridiculous personally. And again, and I'll say, Verstappen is an incredibly talented driver, probably one of the best on the grid, but boy, when he gets upset, it is ugly. It is very ugly. And it unfortunately isn't just confined to outbursts on the radio. He has, on multiple occasions, made use of his car in a pretty uncouth manner. So that's my opinion on it. I do think Red Bull was the team was an aggravating factor. They probably shouldn't have put him on hards. They had time to make that decision, and they shouldn't have told him to give that position up. But that's the end. We will move past Red Bull. He is sitting on some penalty points, so if he gets another penalty point, it's a race ban, but as we've seen, it's pretty hard to pick up that last penalty point. Next up, Williams. Real rough weekend for the Williams outfit. The first time all year they've not put either car into Q3. They've always had at least one car make Q3, and this weekend neither of them did. Alex Albon, real rough day. 2 front wings, one right at the start and one with his tussle with Liam Lawson. And so they retired that car realistically, probably just because, well, they're running out of parts for it. And that's not great for them. Carlos was pretty anonymous as well in that one. And for a team that up till this point in the season looked to be kind of the locked-on leader of the midfield, the 5th best team pretty consistently, it was a really tough weekend to see them score no points. Now, is it the case that this was just a one-off kind of poor showing? Or is it possible that the front wing technical directive has scooped them up, and that is a problem? We'll have to see. We'll wait till next week and see if there is anything new. And I believe that leaves the last team to talk about is the team we are sitting in this week. For round 10, we're in the 10th car, so we'll go back to the top of the order and start going through cars again. Can't believe 10 weeks already of races. Obviously, we've had breaks in between. But Haas was just a non-factor this weekend. Like, there was basically nothing going on for them. Neither car into Q3. They finished the last 2 cars on the road. So it's a bit unfortunately. The team came out of the gate pretty decently, but it would appear that the lack of development is really hampering the team, and they are kind of sliding back. They are still ahead of Alpine in the constructors, but if they don't find some pace soon, there's a very good chance they will be team number 10 out of 10 when the final checkered flag waves in Abu Dhabi. So, I think I've timed it just about right. We'll pull up onto the grid here for the Canadian Grand Prix Circuit Gilles Villeneuve. And I believe pole position's on the left. Yeah, pole position's on the left. And you'll see it's not a huge run down to turn 1. You'll actually see drivers kind of set at an angle because the track curves to the right. So we'll get underway here. And you get right off the line and into the kind of left-right chicane. So you can take a fair bit of the curb on the inside. It's one of your better overtaking opportunities if you can come out of the final chicane well. But then this long sweeping right-hander, look for cars that struggle with rear grip and rear tire wear as the race goes on. Turn 2 is going to get pretty dire. Now, one of the features of this Canadian street circuit is it's a lot of left, right, right, left chicanes. So you blast up this little hill, and then you are into the first of the chicanes. A tricky one, kind of a blind entry as it descends and crests this hill. You'll look for drivers to run out near the wall, and now you have this very quick right-handed sweeper before you get to the next chicane. This one, a little sharper angle on the first one as you get on the brakes, and it is a significant left turn, and then once again getting on the power as you exit the corner. You get a dose of DRS right here to open up for your next overtaking chance. Really not a great overtaking opportunity because the chicanes spread the cars out on acceleration for the most part, but if you have a good tire differential, then you have the opportunity. Now as you come under the bridge, you get the car slowed down for another chicane, this time a right left. A little bit of a tricky one. It's a higher speed one that you can carry some good pace into. And then a good mistake generator is that exit. There's a little bump on the curb there, but it does provide a little bit of a run down to the slowest corner on the track and a decent overtaking opportunity without DRS as you brake for this hairpin down at the end. So big, long runoff straight ahead gives drivers the opportunity to make mistakes without sending it into a barrier. But out of that hairpin is really where you start to head to the best overtaking opportunity on the track. And it's not the easiest track to overtake on for sure. But you have a nice long DRS zone here as you head all the way down to the final chicane, which includes what is aptly known as the Wall of Champions. So you'll see drivers really trying to get as close as they can, use as much of the track on this exit out to this wall. And in fact, you see Wall of Champions right there on the ground ahead of my tire. So some famous drivers have crashed into there in the past, hence the name. But that is a lap of the Canadian Grand Prix circuit. Now strategically, as we pick the pace back up, Canada has usually been a pretty decent track for strategies. The past couple of years mixed up by safety cars and rain. Weather forecast, I believe, is supposed to be dry all this weekend around the Canadian Grand Prix circuit, so I wouldn't expect the rain to play a factor. However, one of the things that has changed from previous years It is another track like Imola and Monaco where the C6 tire is being brought. So instead of the C3, C4, C5 combo, we go a full step softer to that C4, C5, C6. Now the C6 was not a particularly usable tire around Imola. We actually saw some good qualifying results on the medium. So I believe Canada's probably a little smoother, a little less painful for the tire. We'll have to see if that C6 comes into play. The other big thing with strategy is if you notice, the pit lane entry fires straight on here, skips this chicane, and as I come around, it actually skips turns 1 and 2 and rejoins you right here, straight on the exit. So the pit lane, the loss time of that pit lane is significantly less than other tracks, so it does make the extra stop quite a bit more attractive. So it has typically been a 2-stop race. I think with this extra step softer, I think the 1-stop will be actually the worst of the strategies out there. So 2-stop should be a decent opportunity on those softer tires. Let's see, what else do we have to look out for? What do I have to talk about? Oh, well, track limits. There's a good one. Plenty of opportunities to overstep the bounds in those chicanes of track limits. Granted, it's not been a big story this season. In previous years, track limits has been talked about a little bit more. But I think drivers are starting to just get used to the fact that track limits are the track limits. You got to stay in it, otherwise, you know, that's it. There was a lot of hand-wringing and whinging about it in the past, but now it seems like everybody's just kind of happy with track limits. Storylines, obviously, you've got the McLaren championship battle out front between Oscar and Lando. It tends to be the case that Oscar lands a decent punch and then Lando responds. We'll see which of the two McLarens is the lead car in this one. And of course, with the track being a little bit more friendly to multi-stop races, maybe that tire wear advantage that McLaren has will be a little bit less. I don't think it's going to be enough to really upset the order of the race itself, but it may bring that Red Bull team into play as they are very quick but not very good on their tires. Looking for the bounce back of a couple of teams. I think Williams needs a big bounce back. So does Haas. Kimi Antonelli needs a very good race weekend. And Canada's a track that Lewis Hamilton has gone decently at. I would like to see him try and regain some confidence, maybe get a little closer to his teammate in overall pace. As I had a really good lap there, but totally threw it away in the final corner by track limits. So it should be an interesting one. Obviously, Canada's been on the calendar for quite some time and is a well-loved circuit, but usually weather has made for its greatest races, as the overtaking opportunities, like many street circuits, are not that great. But I don't know. We saw Red Bull almost make a 3-stop strategy work in Spain with the significantly reduced pit lane loss. We might see more teams opt for that potential 3-stop strategy. That being said, extra stops usually involves overtaking cars on track, and that's what you got to factor in as well. So I think it's going to be kind of up in the air. We'll see what kind of times people are doing in practices and what those tires look like. I'm still very curious to see what the C6 will do. But 10 weeks into this, 10 races into this 24 race calendar, it is looking like an interesting season all throughout. But I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.